welcome to Insider PV. And well, I'm very happy as always to have a very cool guest. And well, this time I have this man here that I know him for probably more than 10 years.
Easily.
Easily, yes. And I brought him here. I decided to invite him here because he's a person that he knows his business pretty well and also has a very interesting topic that everyone asks me about when they are buying a property here, which is financing, which could be a little bit complicated for some people to understand that. However, that's why I brought the expert Terrence from Mexlend. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, Terrence, tell me, where are you from?
We moved here from New York City 20 years ago.
Okay.
Mexlend is actually the oldest mortgage brokerage in Mexico, in all of Mexico. Okay. While we're headquartered here in Puerto Vallarta, we close loans throughout Mexico.
That's good. So when was the first time that you came to Vallarta? It was 20 years ago or it was...
No, actually, I think it was about 25 years ago. I came here, actually, my partner in New York, my business partner in New York said, kid, you need a break. Why don't you take the keys to my condo in Puerto Vallarta? And they were building a house in San Pancho as well.
Okay.
So why don't you go down and see what Puerto Vallarta is like? And I fell in love with it. I came back, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 times. We made it through 9/11, unfortunately, but that was a tough time in New York City.
Yeah.
But we made it through that. But at one point, we just decided that we would like to try a different life. I was very successful in New York. David was very successful in New York. But we just thought at that time, I'm older than Methuselah now, but at that time I was quite young and in shape. And so we thought, why not? Let's give it a try. And so we formed the corporation and then moved here, and we've been here for 20 years.
So what do you do there in New York?
In New York, I was in a much different business. I Before I came down here, of course, I took the mortgage courses, and I was licensed for that in New York before I came. David, my partner and co-founder of Mexlend, he was a realtor. He was a vice president. He had his own agency for many years, and then he was bought by Barbara Corcoran. Everybody
Okay.
knows Barbara Corcoran. And so he was the vice president of Corcoran for a period of time. But he really was tired of the rat race.
Yeah.
So we had uh, amassed some properties in New York City, and we decided that we would cash in on that to some degree and then bring that down and start a business here. So that's why I love New York City, but it was an opportunity to start something entirely new and a totally different business. And to answer your question, I actually ran a nonprofit theater that still exists to this day.
Okay.
We grew it from a very small thing into a nice sized company. And I was the producing director. I directed theater professionally and also produced theater.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you came for the first time, what captured your soul about Vallarta?
Well, everybody needs to know the people here are extraordinary. I mean, it's just a lovely place to live. And you're getting old when you start looking at the past and saying, "Oh, it was so much better then." And so it's difficult to have this kind of conversation at this point in time because people are still moving here and falling in love with Vallarta as it is right now.
Right now, yeah.
But at that time, when we moved here, of course, electricity would go out for a couple of days. We would just pack up our bathing suits and go to the beach
Uh-huh.
and wait for the electricity and the internet to come back. We were pretty much one of the first companies in Puerto Vallarta that
Uh-huh.
that utilized the internet
Oh, that's
and the websites
yeah.
for a long period of time. If you Googled Hipotecas in Mexico or whatever, Mexlend was the first because we were there before Banorte, Santander, Citibank, all of them.
Yeah.
Plus, we had moved from New York. We were used to that kind of marketing and moving in that direction. But we really fell in love with the climate, the people, the country. I mean, you have to fall in love in order to move yourself from a successful career,
Yeah,
lock, stock, and barrel to another country just because you think you want to try something new. It has to be something that is really spectacular. And it was at that time for us. It was just an amazing place to be.
that's
Polar
awesome.
opposite of New York.
Yeah, I mean, like for coming from the big city, one of the biggest cities in the world, and then coming for, well, it wasn't a fishing village, but it was a very low key,
It was very low
relaxed.
key. You know, I always say when we would go to the beach at
Uh-huh.
that time, there was a live Cuban band that played every day at the beach.
Oh,
Most beautiful music, very sexy, and you felt like you were in a totally different world. That now has been replaced with DJs and house music.
yes.
So it's a totally different feel, it's
Yeah.
a totally different vibe. Um, but it's just a different thing.
That's awesome. Now, when you open Mexlend, you open it because you saw an opportunity for people from that they were not from Mexico to buy a property here.
Correct.
So, how challenging was for you to open Mexlend?
Well, actually, I have to give the credit for that was David Schwendman,
Yeah.
my husband. That occurred to him. He was in real estate in New York. We had done investments together in real estate in New York as well, but he wanted to do something different than real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And he had done the research. At that time, GE Capital was just approaching Mexico.
Yeah.
And so we called our lawyers in New York and they put us in touch with a law firm in San Antonio and Mexico City. And we got all of that paperwork done. We
Mm-hmm.
were permanent residents before we
Yeah.
arrived here. And we got everything, set up for that. But the impetus really was that it was a brand new industry. It was an opportunity to assert ourselves in a brand new industry. We were in the first group of brokers for GE Capital.
Yeah.
And at the time, we developed other companies that we were affiliated with, lenders. At the you know After the financial crisis, we were the only brokers left standing
Okay.
in Mexico
Okay.
uh, because of the banking crisis. Uh, but what left us in good stead was that David never wanted to open the business unless we had options.
Yeah.
And that's really the big thing. Um, Instead of working with a direct lender, which there are some,
Yeah.
if you work with a broker, you have more options.
Yeah.
And if something falls through with one of the lenders, we can match you with another lender.
Yeah.
And the whole point is to have a fail-safe method and also a little bit more hand
Yeah.
through the process. So when GE Capital went out, and it wasn't because of Mexico, it was because of the subprime lending that they were doing in the US
Yeah.
and in London, actually. They went through, everything was Mexico was a big thing for them. But when they went out of business, they went out of business. But we had two other lenders who stayed in business. They were small banks. It was Intercontinental National Bank out of San Antonio,
Mm-hmm.
and then also Laredo Bank. Uh, and So we had those two options going. Uh, they since both of them were bought by larger banks
Yeah.
and ended up exiting the market. But then we had other
Yeah.
lenders that we moved in with.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me, how easy it's for a non-Mexicans to get a loan here in Mexico with you guys?
For foreigners, it's straightforward. It's the same type of process that it is in the U.S. or Canada.
Mhm.
Actually, we need to add Canada in there because
Yeah.
we have a big Canadian base as well. We need bank statements, we need tax returns, we need credit reports, and it all boils down to numbers. It's in that regard, it's simple. The difference here is that the down payments required are higher and only one loan can go on a property. In the US, particularly when I was studying
Yeah.
to come here, there were piggyback loans, there were loans that you could get for the down payment, another loan for this, and another loan for that. And here it's not possible. It is a straightforward one loan, one lender, guaranteed in first position. So that's a little bit different. Also, they need to be prepared for the interest rates.
Yes.
You know,
How much are the interest rates?
Right now, depending, and this is where the broker comes in handy, depending on the lender, depending on the purchase price of the property, depending on if the client is a dual national or not, meaning Mexican and US, they range from 8.5 to 13.74.
Okay.
And that's a widespread. I'm aware of that, but the lower interest rate lenders have purchase price minimums and loan minimums that are pretty high. They are very difficult to qualify for. They want just the best of clients, and they take a little bit longer than some of the other lenders do. Then we have some that are uh, much more quick. The interest rate may be higher, but there's no prepayment penalty. So if somebody wants to move in and get that property really quickly, that could be an option for them. They may pay 12.24%. But if we talk about the speed in which they can get into it, and then there's no prepayment penalty, then it can make up for that.
So how much is the minimum down payment that you require, or the loans that you handle require?
Again, that's where it gets tricky because it depends on the person and where they're from and what the property is. But loans can be had for 10% down up to 40%.
Okay.
Although 10% for a foreigner is pretty non-existent. That's for our dual national Mexican citizens who live and work in the United
In your state.
States and they want to buy a property back here, which is a
Okay.
pretty big market.
Yes.
So they can go in with a lower down payment. And we have as low as 15% for Americans too. But again, that's very rare. And usually when we apply to that company, they'll, you know, like all things, they advertise the best, but then they counter offer with something higher.
Yeah.
I think the safest thing to think about is a 30%.
30%. And the terms about how many years are the loans like
Again, it depends.
depends.
It depends on the lender.
Or
We
the
have,
average more or less.
well, we have some lenders that have a 20-year fixed. Um, and we have other lenders that have an 8-year loan period
Mm-hmm.
with a 30-year amortization. And that sounds a little complicated,
Uh-huh.
but it actually makes sense if we go into it for the lender. But the loan monthly payments are calculated from 30 years, but the loan is due for either renewal or for payment in 8 years.
Yeah. So do you also work with private lenders?
Yes,
Okay. So it's the same characteristic as
yes.
that you do with a bank, right?
Pretty much. And the majority of our lenders are private lenders,
Oh, okay.
meaning that they are they're funds. They're like hedge funds or investment funds, which is also why the interest rates are
Yeah.
at a different place. But even in Mexico, interest rates are higher. What a lot of Americans and Canadians don't appreciate is that, and they've had it for so long, which is really quite wonderful, is that the government their central banks give their banks money for free or for very little money.
Yeah.
And therefore, when the bank tacks on their interest that they need to make the money, the interest rate is very low. But then the government also guarantees that they will buy back those loans at 3.5%, 4%. Now, if we think about it, if we were investing our money, would you be happy with 3.5 or 4%? No.
Yeah, I know.
Only a government would be
Yeah.
happy with that or can sustain those losses over a
Yeah.
period of time. So in Mexico, Mexico's government does not carry that policy.
Hmm.
So the banks, like the US and Canada, used to have up until the 2000, basically, um, rates in the US and Canada were the same, between 8 and 15% for the most part, because they have to make their profit. If the bank is paying 8% for their money, they can't lend it out at 4%.
Yeah.
They're losing money. So obviously it's going to go up to incorporate their profit into it. I'm sorry if that's moving too quick, but that
No
is
problem. That's fine. That's fine.
a lot of people come to us and go, "Oh my God, they're ripping us off. They're not. They're paying more money. They have investors." And so another kind of investment that we have
Yeah.
or another loan that we have, is at Mexlend we have a peer-to-peer lending platform. What that means is you're my peer, you have money that you want to invest, I want to buy a property. We pair them together. We do all the underwriting for it so that it's a very safe loan, and we present the package to our private lender, who could be a person, part of a big group of people. And therefore, that works for them. So you'd be surprised that quite a few realtors are part of that, because they may not be investing in the real estate itself, but they can invest in it and still make
Good profit
10
on
to
that.
12% on their investment, with really safe clients who put down 30% down payments, and have good credit and good payment history. So anyway, so we have a lot of loans going on, which is why when one bank turns it down, we can fall back
And to have
to
another
another,
option.
and then
Yeah.
we have private
Yeah.
loans.
So what is the biggest challenge that probably people from the States or Canada will face at the moment that they will want to apply for a loan
Honestly, it is exactly the same as it
as
is
how
in
is the
this
home?
in the US or in Canada, with the exception that in the US and Canada, everything is automated, everything is computerized, and especially now with AI.
Yeah.
So, you can download all your bank statements, and it goes directly into their system, and it spits out
Okay, yeah.
an application. And in the US and Canada, they have a uniform application. So every bank, every private lender, they all accept the same application.
Yeah.
But for us, it's not so easy. We have to have people in our office
Mm-hmm.
who literally upload all of that, they have to analyze every bank statement, find the deposits, the tax returns, all of those things, and enter that into the system, and enter all of the information into the system, so that we can submit an application to each lender, which is different, a different application.
So if someone is buying with you with a loan, how that the process um, affects or benefit the buyer, for example.
Okay. I've said from the beginning, and this is really quite true, the safest way to buy real estate in Mexico is to use financing,
Okay.
bar none. We have more lawyers that are involved in it. You have a partner in it. You have a lending partner, a bank, or an independent person, and they're interested in having those documents be absolutely correct, and
Yeah.
they won't close unless they're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Whereas with an all cash sale in Mexico is largely unregulated for the realtors in particular, and we see a lot of times things will close even though the documents are not correct. And
Yes.
they will say, oh, we'll catch that up next month, or oh, we'll catch that up. And that can leave you in a bind,
Yeah.
and has left many people in a bind. So it's a very safe way to buy. It gives you somebody part of the team too. For the realtor, it offers them a partner in getting it done. Oftentimes a client will tell a realtor one thing and tell us another thing, or us one thing and the
Yeah.
realtor another thing. So, is everybody's working as a team to get it done. And if somebody is nervous, because, people are buying in a foreign country, and it can be kind of scary,
Yes.
especially when we're talking about the cost of real estate
Yeah.
these days. Um, so they need to know, you know, when they're told by a developer, oh, we can't do this because we haven't gotten this permit, this thing, and then they start getting nervous. That's when we can step in, because we have 20 years in the business at this point in time, and go, no, no, that's right. And then we can go back and explain it to them. This document really has to come through. There's been a problem in the federal government with something or other. It's Christmas time.
Yeah.
It's going to take a month to get that document.
Yeah.
The realtor's being honest with you, the developer's being honest with you. We're gonna get it done.
Yeah.
So it helps that the realtor has a partner, the client has a partner.
That's good. So in pre-construction,
Mhm.
do you handle any type of loans for pre-construction or not?
That's a more nuanced
Okay.
answer, if we'll go for that. And this is another thing that has to do with safety and buying. Pre-construction, if you think about it, let's call if it's a condo in particular,
Mm-hmm.
let's just use a condo.
Yeah.
The developer has a deed,
Yeah.
but the deed is for a piece of land.
Yeah.
There's no building on that land at this point in time. And he gets his permits and everything is in place and it's all go and they start building the different condos. Well, a lender can't give a client money or give the developer, the seller, money for something that doesn't exist.
That is not a collateral.
Correct. There is no collateral.
Yeah.
And that collateral doesn't exist until it becomes a legal entity. And in different states have different laws, but in Jalisco, I believe that the building has to be 90% complete before they will give that what's called a in Spanish, régimen de condominio,
Régimen de
condo
condominio.
regimen. Yeah.
Yes.
So until that exists, and what that document does is it lists out every single unit as its own legal entity
Yes.
and assigns a tax ID, so it is a legal entity.
Yeah.
So when it's sold or when you go to the notary, then that is the collateral. There is a solid collateral there for that. And until that happens, there is no collateral. So if that developer were to go bust, if there were a hurricane and it all blew down or whatever, a buyer on their own with cash may be willing to take that risk,
Yeah.
but a lender is never going to take that risk for that buyer.
Okay.
So what we've done, and we've done this for so many years, we actually pioneered this, is that we will get the client qualified
Uh-huh.
and we will actually get a commitment from the lender. So now the client has the confidence that they're going to get that loan, that they have a loan ready. That gives the realtor hopefully a sale or somebody who's comfortable that it's going to close when it is. And so when those documents are all ready, then we can move into that with um, with the loan. There's also something that we can do too because it's a technicality. Let's say the buyer decides that they want the deepest discount that they can get.
Uh-huh.
And so they pay 100%. And just for the sake of ease, let's just call it $100,000.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to find an apartment
Yeah.
for 100,000, but let's call it 100,000. So the lender may require 30,000 as the down payment, but they've already given the developer 100,000, right? So what we do is when we go to closing, when they do that, we will still get that loan. The lender, and if they qualified, will put 70,000 or the 70% into the bank account or into, sorry, the escrow account, and the client has $70,000 in there that which they can pay off the closing costs and of which when everything left over because they've already paid the developer all their money
Yeah.
goes back to them. So it's almost like doing a cash out refi
Okay.
without doing a cash out refi because and it's possible because you have not legally transferred that property until that closing.
Yeah.
That's when you actually buy it. So this is kind of confusing, but what people don't realize is when they sign a pre-construction contract here is that the developer usually requires 100% upon delivery of the unit. But just because you're living in that unit, just because you've decorated it beautifully, and even if you're renting out that unit, you still do not own
Yeah.
that unit. You do not own that unit until you take those papers that we're talking about and go in front of a notary,
Yeah.
pay your closing costs,
Exactly.
and the
Yeah.
property is in your name.
Yeah. That's good. It's important that people know about the different ways how they can buy a property here. I always been a big promoter of everyone can have a piece of paradise if you want to name it. Could be pre-construction, could be with a mortgage broker, or we can be in cash, or could be I don't know, like private or sellers financing, right?
Seller
So it
finance.
depends too, depends. But it's I think that's why I decided to invite you to Insider PV, that that you can spread the message about your services, and also that it's how it's possible that people they can have a property here.
Sure. And it's not like everybody is going to want this loan or even qualify or whatever, but it is there as a tool.
Yes.
We're there if you need it and if you want it. Um, yes, the majority of people who purchase here still get their loan in the US against their property in the
Mm-hmm.
US or Canada and bring that cash here and pay all cash with
Yes.
that. But some people don't have that equity in their properties. Another person that is a big part of our business is someone who has a 401k and they're not quite ready to retire
Yeah.
and they're not quite at the right age. And if they pull that money out, they're going to hit a huge
Tax implication.
tax implication on that, about like 30%. So if their money is already making 12%,
Mm-hmm.
and they can get the loan to do the property and they can get their money in 3 years, 4 years. Yes, they're going to be paying that interest, but hopefully they're making a little bit more
Yeah.
than what the interest that they're paying is on it. So, but at the bare minimum, they're breaking even
Yeah.
and they've gotten that property at a price that is going to be lower
Yeah.
than it is in
In
4 years
the future, yes.
or in the future. So we do a lot of that too. And then if you get a loan with no prepayment penalty, then boom, you're out of there and it's easy. Um, if you want to purchase with an LLC, we have loans for that. And you were talking about, sorry, going back to pre-construction. Let's back that to construction.
Yeah.
If you want to buy a lot and build a house, or you're going to buy a house from a developer,
Yeah.
we do have a loan for construction of
Oh.
a house, but not for a condo.
Yes.
And the reason is for the construction of a house, they still have the collateral of the lot.
That lot. Yes.
So there's something there that
Yeah.
they can hang their hat.
Oh, that's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Terrence, is something else that I missed to ask you that you think that it's important that people need to know?
I think we kind of covered almost everything, but of course I'm going to get back and I'm going to, oh, we should have talked about this.
No problem.
But no, I think we pretty much covered it. Oh, except that I will say, so loans are in U.S. dollars.
Okay,
We have
good
U.S.
deal.
dollar lenders. We have Mexican peso lenders, and we also have a Canadian dollar lender.
Okay.
So that's a kind of a new wrinkle for us to have the Canadian dollar lender. So if there are Canadians out there looking to purchase a property, especially if you're buying from another Canadian,
Uh-huh.
you can keep everything in Canadian dollars and not have to worry about all of the exchange problems.
That's awesome. So Mexland is celebrating their 20,
20th.
20th. That's good.
Yeah,
Are you
long time.
are you gonna do a big party?
I've been thinking about it, but I think I'm gonna wait till we get into the cooler season.
Okay.
I don't want to have a
In the middle of summer.
in the middle
No.
of summer, and actually, that is the anniversary was in June,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
so I kind of skipped.
You're
it,
skipping that. That's good. That's good. Sorry, Terrence, how they can find Mexland online?
Very easy. www.mexlend.com. MEXLEND.com. We also have telephone numbers in the US, telephone numbers in Mexico, and there's always somebody to answer your call.
And what about your email?
Email, generally on the website, you can go to info@mexlend.com, and that's the best way to do it.
Okay, so
Contact us at Edwin Mexlend.
that's awesome. Well, Terrence, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here on Insider PV. It was a very good information that you shared with all of us. And well, if you want to buy a property with a loan, well, the guys from Mexland, they can help you. You know how they can get in touch with Terrence. And well, he and his team, they will be all into all those details. Well,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
You bet. Thank you.
Gracias. Very nice
Have
to
a
see
nice
you too.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Well,
for having us.
gracias. Bye, guys. Awesome.